What if everything you believed about love, loyalty, and marriage was a lie? Welcome to a place where secrets don't stay buried, where every twist of fate uncovers raw betrayal, hidden affairs, and shocking double lives. This isn't just about broken hearts. It's about calculated revenge, silent exits, truths that destroy illusions, and women who rise from the wreckage, stronger, colder, smarter. He thought the red door would stay hidden. He thought the other woman would never find out. He thought no one would ever make him pay. He was wrong. Every story here is based on lies exposed, power reclaimed, and husbands who thought they'd never fall. If you've ever been lied to, gaslit, or underestimated, these stories are for you. Subscribe now, turn on the bell, and prepare to feel every twist, every betrayal, every payoff. There was no screaming, no fighting, just silence, a silence so thick it rang louder than any confrontation ever could. It began on a Tuesday afternoon, the kind of ordinary day people forget. The sun was bright but unremarkable, the air carried no warning, and the traffic hummed in that dull rhythm that makes you believe life is normal. But the moment the glove box clicked open, everything shifted. The tube was bright red, not a muted maroon or a dusty rose. Red, fire, engine, brazen, unapologetic red, the kind that stains white collars and demands attention, a shade too bold to be innocent. It sat there beside crumpled gas receipts and a half-eaten protein bar, tucked carelessly like it belonged. But it didn't belong, not in that car, not in that life, and certainly not with that man. He always said he hated red. Said it looked cheap, said it wasn't a color for someone like me. And I believed him. For years I avoided it, didn't buy red dresses, didn't wear red heels, and certainly never wore red lipstick. That tube wasn't mine. That much was clear, but what it was a message, a loud one, a silent scream in a world where everything was supposed to be quiet. There was a receipt beside it, a bar I'd never heard of, dated last Thursday, when he said he was working late. The math started adding itself up without permission. That lipstick didn't land there by accident. It was forgotten in a rush, left behind by someone who didn't need to hide. The funny thing about betrayal is how slowly it unfolds. It doesn't explode. It drips, one drop of suspicion at a time. A late text, a glance that lingers too long at his phone, the way he stopped asking questions, stopped touching the small of my back when we passed each other in the kitchen. The lipstick was the first object that spoke, but it didn't tell the whole story, not yet. He came home that night like nothing had changed, tossed his keys on the counter, kissed my cheek with the same lips that probably kissed someone else the night before. He told me he was exhausted, that work was getting intense, that he needed a few quiet nights. I nodded. I asked if he wanted dinner. He said yes. I made his favorite, watched him eat it with the same mouth that told so many lies. There were no accusations, just careful observation. He laughed at a show we used to love. He scrolled through his phone too often. He smiled, but it never reached his eyes, and I smiled back, like I hadn't opened the glove box. Like I hadn't seen the red lipstick and the receipt and the way he left the car door unlocked, like secrets didn't matter, but they did. The next morning, I checked the car again. The lipstick was gone. He must have seen it, known I saw it too, but he didn't say anything. That was the first mistake, because silence isn't always surrender. Sometimes it's preparation. There was no sleep that night. Just staring at the ceiling, trying to remember every Thursday, every late meeting, every moment I was alone while he said he was working. I wondered who she was, wondered if she laughed at his jokes, if she knew he was married, if she wore red because he told her it was sexy, because he told me it wasn't. In the morning, he kissed me again, that same kiss, that same mask. He said he had another long day ahead, that he might be late again. I just nodded and watched him leave, and when he pulled out of the driveway, I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I just sat down with my tea, stared at the red lipstick still burned into my memory, and started to write everything down. Times, days, gaps in stories, little lies that used to seem small, because once you see the crack, you can't unsee it. And that's the thing about silence. It listens, it learns, and when it's ready, it strikes. The day after finding the lipstick, the world didn't collapse. The sun still rose, coffee still brewed, and the front door still opened to his familiar footsteps. That was the most painful part. How normal it all seemed, how easy it was for someone to lie so completely and still act like everything was fine. He sat at the breakfast table, scrolling through his phone, murmuring something about deadlines and board meetings. His eyes didn't meet mine. They rarely did anymore. I asked if he wanted eggs or just toast. He smiled and said, "Surprise me." So I did. I served him the usual, but with eyes that no longer saw the man I marry, only the stranger he had become. Dinner still made it to the table, the meat seasoned just how he liked, the wine poured into his favorite glass. He complimented the meal. I thanked him like always, but every fork he lifted, every sip he took, made my stomach twist, because all I could see was the red lipstick. All I could hear was the silence between us growing louder. He thought everything was fine. He thought silence meant safety, but what he didn't understand was that silence had become the sharpest weapon. There was a time when I would have asked, confronted, fought, but I had already learned. Fighting gave him control. It gave him the upper hand, so I smiled. I folded his shirts just the way he liked them, creased at the sleeves, his favorite scent on the fabric. I kissed his cheek before he left for work, told him to drive safe, watched him lie with the ease of a man who had done it 100 times before. The act became second nature, playing the part of the loyal wife. The quiet home, the well-made bed, but behind every soft reply, every polite nod, a storm gathered. It twisted tighter every day. I studied him now, not because I loved him, but because I needed to understand what kind of monster could live beside me for so long and still keep secrets so well. He didn't know I had started checking his phone bills, the unknown numbers, the 11 p.m. calls marked work, the restaurant charges at places I'd never been. He didn't notice that I no longer asked about his day, that I no longer waited up for him when he came home late, that I no longer needed his words to tell me anything. His silence was already doing it for him. He didn't notice that while he was busy keeping up the lie, I was busy watching it unravel. The nights were the hardest. He would roll over, place a hand on my back, sometimes kiss my shoulder like he used to. I used to believe those touches meant something. Now I knew better. I'd lie there in the dark, heart beating too loud, wondering if he used the same hands to undress someone else. If he whispered the same lies to her, if he laughed differently with her, or if the smile I once thought was mine was never really meant for me. Every moment with him felt like theater now, a stage where he played the role of a devoted husband. And I, the loyal wife, except I knew the script had changed, the lines were broken, the story was false, and I was done pretending I didn't see it. What he never realized was that the game had already begun. He gave himself away in tiny ways, the way he checked his phone in the bathroom now, the way he locked it when he left the room, the way he stopped sharing small things, his schedule, his mood, his day. He had become a stranger I served coffee to, a ghost that slipped in and out of the house with a suitcase of lies, but I kept pretending, because pretending gave me time, and time gave me power. He thought I was still his. Still fooled, still soft, but the truth was, the woman he once lied to was gone, and the woman who remained was watching him dig his own grave with every lie he thought I didn't notice. He never saw it coming. But he will. It wasn't a hotel. It wasn't a friend's place. It was something far worse, a quiet neighborhood on the edge of town, where every house looked the same except one, a little white house with a red door. The kind of red that mocked everything he ever said he wasn't. The kind of red that lived in my nightmares long before I knew it was real. He left his tablet open that morning, careless, maybe arrogant, maybe just tired, but the address was right there in the rideshare history, a place he visited more than once, A place that didn't belong to any story he'd told me. He said he had a meeting, said he'd be home late again. I nodded, kissed his cheek, and waited exactly 10 minutes before walking out the door. The closer I got, the colder I felt. Street names I didn't recognize, houses I'd never seen, but then I found it. The red door, that door shouldn't have meant anything, just paint, just a color, but it felt loud, like it had been waiting for me, like it had been laughing at me from the beginning. There was a swing set in the yard. Worn but used, a bicycle tipped on its side, a tiny soccer ball under a bush. I stood there for a moment, heart in my throat, afraid to breathe, terrified to blink in case the illusion shattered even more. And then I heard it, laughter, small, light, pure, the sound of a child, and his voice, his laugh, the one I used to wait for at the door every evening, the one I used to think belonged to me. It didn't. The curtain shifted, a figure moved, then another, him and a woman, younger, her arm around his waist, his mouth close to her ear, their bodies moving in sync like they'd done it 1,000 times. She turned, smiled, and disappeared inside the red door. He followed carrying a child. His child. My legs didn't move. My hands didn't shake. I just stood there as the truth rewrote everything I ever believed. Every birthday gift, every whispered promise, every lazy Sunday morning meant nothing now. It was all part of a play, and I had never been the lead. That house was more than just an address. It was a second life, one he built while I folded his clothes and made his dinner, while I waited for him to come home late, exhausted from work. While I believed he was just tired, just distant, just stressed. He wasn't. He was living, laughing, loving somewhere else with someone else. It wasn't just betrayal, it was erasure. I had been replaced. Quietly, without a scene, without a word, but that silence ended here. I turned away without knocking, without announcing I had seen it all. There was no point. He had already shown me everything I needed to know. He gave his heart, his time, his love to them, and left me with empty smiles and red flags I ignored. I drove home slowly, the way you do after a funeral, because something had died, not just a marriage, but a version of myself that still believed in him. That version was gone now, buried behind a red door. Back home, I walked past the photos on the wall vacations, birthdays, anniversaries. They looked different now, like props, like someone else's life. A life I was never truly part of. A life he let me believe in, just long enough to make the fall hurt more. I didn't cry. I sat in the dark and stared at the wall for hours, playing back every moment I had trusted him. Every time I defended him, every time I thought he would never. But he did, and not just once. He built a home with someone else while mine slowly fell apart. There's something about standing in front of another woman's door and realizing your husband lives there too. Something permanent, something shattering, the kind of truth that never leaves you, and the kind of betrayal that never deserves forgiveness. There's a certain kind of pain that only another woman can understand. A woman who believed the same lies, held the same hopes, and gave her heart to a man who wore a different face depending on who was looking. She wasn't supposed to matter. She was supposed to be the other woman, the enemy. But when I looked into her eyes for the first time, all I saw was someone who had been just as used, just as broken, just as betrayed. She opened the door with caution. Her hand trembled slightly, unsure whether I was there to fight, to scream, to destroy. But I didn't come for a scene. I came for truth, and she gave it to me faster than I expected. A photograph sat framed on the hallway table, him, her, and a little boy with the same eyes he never passed on to me. There was no denying it. He had given her what he once promised me. Her face twisted with confusion when I said his name, his full name, not the one he gave her, not the one he used for his fake work profile or burner phone. The real one, the name on our marriage certificate, the name I used to whisper before bed, the name our neighbors still attached to our mailbox. Her knees gave slightly. She leaned on the doorframe like her world was suddenly tilting, just as mine had days before. She didn't scream, she didn't deny it, she just invited me in. It was strange, sitting in another woman's kitchen, hearing the same stories I had once believed. He had told her he was single, divorced long ago. Said I was unstable, controlling, that he only stayed in touch for the sake of peace. The same lines, rearranged, recycled, reshaped to fit her version of him, and she bought it, because he made it easy to believe. Because when someone wants to be loved, they don't look for the cracks, they paint over them. I asked her how long. She said 6 years. 6, longer than some marriages survive, longer than most affairs are meant to last. Long enough for her to call him home, long enough for their child to call him dad. He told her he was working on custody, that I was fighting him in court, that it would all be over soon. I let her talk. I let her break, and then I showed her the lipstick. She gasped. It was hers. She had been looking for it. I told her where I found it. She didn't speak for a while after that, just sat there, eyes wide, mouth slightly open, as if choking on every word she'd ever believed. I knew that silence. I had lived in it. It was the silence of a woman watching her reality collapse. She wasn't the villain. She was me, or at least the version of me he created in another timeline. A timeline I never signed up for. He had rewritten both our stories, stolen time, stolen truth, and for what? Control. He thought he had us both, thought we would never know, but he was wrong. I pulled out my notebook, showed her dates, receipts, records, the lies I had been collecting in silence. Her face went pale as it all came together. The fake business trips that aligned with their vacations, the conferences that overlapped with their anniversaries, the calls he made to her while lying in bed beside me, and when the tears came, they weren't mine, they were hers. That's when I knew. We weren't enemies, we were witnesses, and once the truth was laid bare, it no longer had power over us. He underestimated how dangerous 2 heartbroken women could be when they stopped hurting and started thinking. She offered me tea. I offered her everything I knew. We didn't make threats, we made plans. Because he built 2 lives with lies, and we were going to tear both apart with the truth. There was no screaming when it all came apart, no broken plates, no middle of the night arguments, just silence. Controlled, focused, every breath measured, every step planned, because what he didn't know was that the moment he let another woman's lipstick roll around in the glove box, he'd already lost. It began with small things. Passwords he never changed, phone bills that arrived like clockwork, bank accounts he thought I didn't know about. He got careless, comfortable. Men like him always do. They believe silence means weakness. That if nothing is said, nothing is known, but silence can be a scalpel, and I used it to cut through every single lie, while he played house across town and whispered promises into someone else's ear. I sat at our kitchen table collecting proof. He thought I was baking, I was watching. He thought I was cleaning, I was tracing. He thought I was waiting, I wasn't. I found the second phone, hidden in the lining of his gym bag, set to silent, no password. He hadn't even tried to protect it. He must have thought I'd never look, or maybe he didn't care anymore. That phone opened a new world, photos, messages, love notes that weren't mine, videos of birthdays I didn't know he attended, screenshots of hotel reservations and flight confirmations, all under aliases, all funded by accounts I had never seen. That's when I started digging deeper. He had a separate savings account, transferring small amounts every week, enough to stay unnoticed, but steady enough to build something secret. I printed everything, dated it, labeled it, created a folder with tabs, banking, travel, communication, assets. He would have laughed if he saw it. Thought it was obsessive, but it wasn't madness, it was preparation. The more I uncovered, the more calculated I became. I hired a private investigator, quietly, discreetly. He was worth every dollar. Photos, timestamps, audio recordings, Proof, cold, undeniable proof. Everything he denied, everything he said I was imagining, it was all real, and now it was all documented. He thought I was still oblivious. I was organizing. He thought he still had control. I was already pulling the strings. Every time he left, I smiled. Every time he returned late, I kissed him on the cheek. I let him believe the lie was working. Because people like him don't fear consequences until it's too late to stop them, and by the time he realized I knew, the walls were already closing in. I made copies of everything, stored them in 3 different locations. One with my lawyer, one with someone I trusted, and one where he'd never think to look. I started shifting money from our joint account into one only I had access to, bit by bit, enough to leave him with nothing he could use against me. I recorded his phone calls, every excuse, every sweet nothing. I had enough to ruin his job, his name, and every fraudulent document he ever signed, and still, I said nothing. I cooked his meals, laughed at his jokes, bought groceries for a life he thought we were still living, all while knowing it was about to end. The woman he betrayed me with became an unexpected ally. She gave me screenshots of her conversations with him. Audio messages, the ones where he promised her a future, swore I was just a technicality, a woman he wasn't ready to let go of yet. Her heartbreak was still fresh, but her rage was useful. Together, we built a case strong enough to collapse him from the inside. When I served him the papers, he didn't even see it coming. He blinked like someone had switched the lights off, tried to speak, tried to reach, but it was too late. His lawyer called him that evening, confused, maybe even panicked. The accounts were frozen, the house, mine the car, registered solely in my name, the evidence. Sealed and submitted. I didn't give him drama, I gave him consequences. Every step was deliberate. Every move made months in advance. While he played with lives like they were toys, I dismantled his world one quiet choice at a time. He lost the house, he lost his job, he lost me, and all he could do was watch, because no one escapes truth when it's dressed in silence and armed with proof. He always believed he was too clever to get caught, too charming to face consequences, too necessary to lose. That was his armor, his smug certainty that no matter what he did, no matter how many lies he told, he'd still walk away clean. That belief carried him through years of betrayal, right into the arms of another life. But what he never saw coming was the day it would all collapse, not with screams or violence, but with a single knock on the door, and a lawyer standing behind it. He wasn't home when the papers arrived. I made sure of that. Timing was everything. They were delivered while he sat in a boardroom, pretending to be the man he never really was, respectable, reliable, professional. I imagine he opened them with the same arrogance he wore like cologne. I also imagine the panic set in before he finished the first page. When he walked through the door that night, everything was already gone. The closet space he used to crowd with his suit, emptied, the watch box he guarded like gold, missing. My scent no longer lingered in the air. The photos were off the walls, my books gone from the shelves, and the silence waiting for him wasn't soft. It was final. He called my name like it still belonged to him, like I would come running, but I was already gone. The house no longer echoed with my footsteps, only with his realization that the end wasn't a conversation, it was a conclusion. He had expected tears, a breakdown, maybe even a fight. He would have loved that. It would have given him control, given him a stage, but what he got was paperwork. Legal, sharp, irreversible. He left 2 lives burning behind him, one built with lies, the other shattered by them. And both were crumbling at once. I made sure of that. The woman he called his future had already discovered his past. She knew now she was never the only one, that her promises were borrowed, that her dreams were scripted from a lie. She left him too, quicker than I expected. No words, just a message. You deserve this. It was almost poetic. The job that once praised him now knew everything about the fake accounts, the suspicious travel expenses, the client meetings that never existed. His charm turned to suspicion. His presence became a liability. He thought his title would protect him, but truth doesn't care about titles, and neither did I. He tried to call, left voicemails, long ones, short ones, tearful ones. He said he was sorry, that he was confused, that it didn't mean what I thought it did, that he could explain. But the man who spent years weaving lies forgot that explanations mean nothing to someone who has already heard the truth. He begged for a meeting, just one, to talk, to see me, to fix it, but he didn't get a meeting. He got my signature on every page that ended us. There was no big scene, no angry confrontation, just the cold, quiet dismantling of a man's illusion. The woman he thought would never leave was already standing on the other side of freedom, and not once did she look back. He lost the house he used to cheat in. He lost the job he thought defined him. He lost the carefully curated version of himself he spent years polishing. And me, I walked away with everything, because sometimes revenge isn't fire. It's frost. It's the quiet exit that leaves a louder impact than any scream ever could. He lost the house, the job, and every lie he thought he'd buried. She didn't just leave, she walked away with everything. And when the truth came knocking, he was the one who finally shattered. If that hit something deep inside you, make sure to like, subscribe, and share this story, because we're just getting started, and trust me, the secrets only get dark.